Hello, everybody. Thank you. I actually caught a cold on my way here, so I apologize for the weird voice. So I'm going to talk to you about our study around Combosquatting, a joint project between Georgia Tech and Stony Brook University. Lately, the feedback I get is like Combosquatting sounds kind of funny. So I'm going to go ahead and describe that and define that in a second. But first, let me start with a brief story. Like about a year ago, when a very good friend of mine was trying to buy some shoes. So she was going online, looking at all the e-shops there and like find tons of different things. She gets bored, goes back to reading the news and blog posts and stuff like that, where she finds an ad and clicks on that. That takes her to NikeShoppings.com, a website that looks kind of like this one. What's particularly interesting about this website is that it's got these shoes like 70% off. I mean, who can resist that, right? She goes ahead and buys the shoes, pays $80 for them, waits for a while, a week goes by, no shoes are there, and she texts me, and she's like, well, I did this and that, can you please help me out? Like, where do you buy them from? NikeShoppings.com, and I'm like, that sounds kind of weird. So I go to the website, there's no website there. The web server said, like, I can't find that thing, or the browser. Tried to resolve that domain name, and the domain name was actually deleted, like it didn't exist anymore, and that was like just a week later. At that moment, I was like, Nike Shopping, can it be that easy? Is there anything else like that out there? If only we had some DNS data, right? Thankfully, Astrolab's lab is running the active DNS project that can feed us with tons of different DNS data. They collect daily and they make it like public for research. At the moment at the time of this study, we're looking at 500 billion resource records over a period of almost a year. Thankfully, we also had some passive DNS data. That was for almost 5 years, and we're looking at like 13 billion resource records from one of the largest ISPs in North America. So I throw Nike in there, and I'm like, what do we get back? Unfortunately, the results didn't really look that good, right? I would need like 1,000 more slides like this one just to put the domain names we found up here. Don't worry, these slides are not there. But when I saw that, I was like, we probably have an issue here. So I grabbed my advisor, grabbed a couple of friends in the lab, grabbed some smart people from Stony Brook, put them in a room, locked the door, threw the key away, and I'm like, we need to study this, right? When you put many smart people in a room, nice things happen, like coming up with a definition of the problem. So we define Combosquatting as grabbing a trademark or a popular domain name, adding words behind it or after it or several different characters, and registering that as a new domain name. We have two very important rules. One, the trademark or the original domain name, we refer to that as trademark from this point on, has to be in there intact. We don't want any changes to that, and it must not be a product of typosquatting. For example, GoogleE.com, that might sound like Combosquatting with the extra E, but in fact, it is part of typosquatting, which has been studied in the past. So to actually conduct our study, we need some trademarks, right? To do that, we go in the Alexa list. We grab the 500 most popular domain names in the United States, primarily because it's a language we all could speak in the lab. We remove some noisy trademarks. For example, AT&T or ATT.com can be found in several different words, like attorney, for instance. We don't want attorney domains appearing in our data set. Same thing with Apple. Like you can have applewholesalefruits.com, for instance, and it's someone who sells apples. We don't want to count that as Combosquatting. So we remove all the noisy domain names. And at the time of writing this, it was a little before the presidential elections, so we add the politics category in there ourselves, and we also add the energy sector as part of the critical infrastructure to see what's going on there. In the end, we end up with 268 different trademarks in 22 different categories. We take those 268 trademarks and put them back into those two datasets that we talked about earlier. The results were even worse. We actually found a lot of those domain names in several different categories. We actually saw that search engines and portals was like the most affected category, and it actually makes sense. That category contains trademarks like Google, Baidu, Yahoo, things that are super popular and people will abuse them. And if we look at the normalized distribution, that's like taking all the Combosquatting domains we have in that category and divide them by the trademarks we have in that category, social networks go rank second, which also kind of makes sense. Like we have things like Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, all in that category. Things that people like to abuse. So the next step is to look at how do these domain names look over time, right? What you see here is a plot of the number of domain names we saw per day over that period of almost 6 years. Passive DNS, we see like a steady line over there. And in the active DNS, we see an actually increasing trend. I want to make clear that passive DNS data is data that is collected organically. It's data that is like generated from clients. Active DNS data is data that is generated by the actual Lavos Lab and the Active DNS project, which like grabs popular domain names and resolves them itself. So if a new domain name is registered but not used, we won't see it in the passive DNS, but we'll see it in the active DNS. We compare that to typo squatting. Typo squatting is a well-studied problem in the past, so we want to see how does Combosquatting relate to that. And in fact, Combosquatting is a couple of orders of magnitude more prevalent than typo squatting. What's important is that dashed line, let me fix that. That dashed line over there shows the maximum number of typo squatting domains you can have for the 268 trademarks we started with. So for example, you can only typo squat Google this many times. You cannot typo forever, right? You're gonna keep going. But with Combosquatting, you can just keep adding characters there, right? So we see in the existing domains part, in the active DNS, we see that the typo squatting trend is almost reaching that limit that is like the upper bound of the typo squatting domains we can have. However, Combosquatting is almost 2 orders of magnitude more than the maximum number of typo squatting domains we can have. To put things in perspective, these are the domain names we had in our data sets. We're looking at 2.7 million domain names over those almost 6 years, right? And very good question was, how many of those are actually bad, right? We had enough bad data. If you don't trust me, look in the paper. We have explained that in detail. We're looking at like 1 billion records in malware data set, 610 million records in public blacklists. We have spam trap data, APT data. In total, we only saw 21.7 thousand domain names of the Combosquatting ones being bad. Which begs the question, how was it that easy for us to find something like that? Trust me, we didn't spend any time. It was really easy. Unfortunately, when my dad sees a domain name like that, bankofamerica.com, login, sysupdate online, whatever.com, he'll be like, well, my son said that we need Bank of America in there, we have .com in there, I can see that, and it's a new system that's updated for me to log in, so let me just log in here, right? And there go his credentials. Similarly to someone who wants to book on Airbnb. You go online looking at Airbnb, you don't understand how it works, and that's perfectly fine. But then you see an ad. Click here to learn more about Airbnb, and you go to Airbnb for beginners, which requires Flash for you to work with the site. And you've done that before, you know the drill. You click, yes, I accept, yes, continue, update this, do that, download, yes, 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 next, okay. And now you have some malware running on your computer. And unfortunately, this doesn't even end there. We've seen domain names like that. Activate my credit card, bankofamerica.com, it's the very last one, don't look for it. All the other ones have missing letters from the Activate My Credit card. So you can definitely go ahead and register Activate My Credit, Bank of America, and for better or worse, the human brain will take care of like filling the gaps when they see that domain name. And unfortunately, people might be falling for these. You may ask, how much do they fall for that, right? Well, we have an answer to that. The y-axis on this plot is in the orders of billions, and these are resolution requests per day for the 5 years of passive DNS data we're looking at. Down there in January 2015, we have around 60 billion resolution requests for that specific day, only for Combosquatting domain names, which is kind of crazy if you ask me. So we're looking at the infrastructure that hosts those domain names, and how do these domain names stay alive over time? The plot on the left-hand side right there is the Alexa rank for Combosquatting domain names. Whatever's on the far left over there are the top Alexa ranks. So we see Combosquatting domains, even the red, the malicious ones, the abusive ones out of the 21.7 thousand, appearing in the very top Alexa ranks. Those are domain names that compete head-to-head to CNN.com or ESPN.com. Like, they go way, way up. And on the right-hand side, you see how much we lag behind identifying those domain names. Think of the 0 on the x-axis right there, the thick line, as a 0 day, right? In network traffic, we have the ability to know what happened before that 0 day if we have collected enough traffic, right? So whatever's on the left-hand side is whatever's bad. Whatever's on the right-hand side means that we're doing a good job. Unfortunately, for almost 50% of the domain names, they appear in network traffic 30 days, or almost 30 days, before we even know that they're bad. That's not the case for the spam trap data, which kind of makes sense. An email might land in a mailbox, and the user might not click on the domain name before the spam trap realizes that that's a bad domain name. But for public blacklists and malware traces, we're definitely way, way behind. And of course, we've been training our users for years and years, excuse me, to trust anything green on the website. Like, you see green, it means good. Well, that's not the case with HTTPS, right? We've been confusing HTTPS as trust to where I am versus privacy for the communication channels. We grab the certificate transparency data, almost 700,000 certificates at the time of writing. And we found 107,000 Combosquatting fully qualified domain names in there. Well, nowadays, it is almost trivial to get an SSL certificate programmatically. I mean, even when they expire, you just push a button and then it just becomes active again, all thanks to Let's Encrypt, which accounts for almost 50% of those Combosquatting fully qualified domain names. That's not necessarily a bad thing. The bad thing is how we train our users to think that they should trust whatever is green, right? Since we're talking about domain names and words, the next best thing is to analyze the lexical characteristics of those. So we use natural language processing algorithm to separate words within domain names and find like strings and substrings in those domain names. What we see is actually adversaries are not really augmenting a domain name with many more characters. They like to keep it simple and short. I guess we fall for them easier like that. But what we see is that there's no strict correlation between the different words they might be using or the different characters they might be adding. It looks like as a one-to-one mapping, more or less. However, it is critical to understand that they do know how to target certain industries. So the financial sector, for example, we see there domain names including words like bank, online services, investment, things that people would expect to see when they're going to an investment or to a financial related domain name or website. The same with the social networks. You can have the Facebook, the Twitter, or Instagram followers, or click here for marketing in LinkedIn, or whatever, right? So the adversaries know the context that they're going to use the words for. And even drilling down to the specific companies, we have Comcast, for instance. Comcast owns Universal Studios. Go ahead and register Comcast-universal-studios.com, and now you can start phishing Comcast or Universal employees, right? Similarly, with Chevron in the critical infrastructure, right? Card, online, gift account. That actually puzzled me in the beginning, but then I was like Googling around, found out that Chevron is running a loyalty program. So it makes sense to register chevron-card-gift.com and start collecting users' credentials, right? The last thing we do is look at how these domain names relate to badness and malware and bad behavior online. This is a little more trickier. We start with the 1.3 million fully qualified domain names we had in ActiveDNS. And we do that in ActiveDNS so that we can share our findings and our data sets with the community. We remove and exclude effectively all the domain names that are owned or operated by the owner of the original trademark. So if you're Google and you have Combosquatting domain for Google, we exclude those, and we crawl the rest of them. We collect screenshots, we collect HTML data, we collect as much data as we can, PCAPs of network traffic. And it's easy for us to exclude domains of affiliate related to affiliate abuse. We look for affiliate IDs in the domain names, and we can easily identify those. We find a few phishing websites. Again, manually looking at screenshots and the websites themselves, 175 phishing websites quickly. And then we use clustering on the screenshots of the rest of the websites. We take the websites and we create clusters of websites that look similar. Unfortunately, we end up with tens of thousands of clusters. So what we do is we take the 8.7 thousand largest clusters and we label one domain for the most popular trademark within that cluster. That gives us around 200,000 to 300,000 domain names that were included in those 8.7 thousand clusters. And the results of that were unfortunately really, really bad. Talking about the 21.7 thousand domains we found in the static lists, we saw that 13.4, almost 13.4% of the domain names were actually identified as malicious from our own users who labeled the data from our team. And I want to bring your attention to the suspicious class right here. Unfortunately, we cannot tell if a website is good or bad just by looking at it or looking at a screenshot of that when it's like a parking site, a parking page, or an under construction page. It might be under construction right now, but 5 minutes later it's going to be a phishing site, and 10 minutes later it's going to be under construction again. So if you don't crawl it right at the right time, it's kind of hard to tell if it is actually good or bad. So we cluster all those and we label them as suspicious and potentially malicious websites. So that brings us to the very good question, is there a solution on that, for that problem actually? In our paper we discuss a three-tier potential solution. We start from the registrants, everybody who registers domain names, the registrars where we go and register domain names, and third parties, us here in this room. So the registrants, unfortunately, they cannot do defensive registrations like they do in typo squatting. Typo squatting, you take the generative model, generate all the typo squatting domains, you can go ahead and register those, you're good, nobody else can register them. But here, you might go ahead and register googlesocks.com, Google registers that as a defensive registration, I can go ahead and register googlesocks2.com or googlesocksmore.com, and whatever I want, it can just keep going on and on. However, we shouldn't stop using our trademarks in new domain registrations. It took me quite a while to figure out that paypal-prepaid.com was actually owned by PayPal when it was first registered, when it first appeared, and wasn't like a domain name they took back. And they ran a credit card campaign through that domain name. We should stop doing things like that because users think that that's the right policy and that's how things are done online. The registrars, they can flag domain names that contain popular trademarks. They can say that, oh, hold on, you're trying to register googlesomething.com. Let's make sure that there's a legitimate reason why you want to register that. And for the rest of us, we should start taking into consideration domain name features and, of course, combo squatting. When we're building systems, it's nice using all these features that we've been talking about, but it would also be nice to consider combo squatting as an actual problem. At the moment, probably registrars is the best way to go. For example, Namecheap right here. Try to register google-account.something. They say, hold on, come here, let's have a talk. Who are you? Why do you want that? Same with Facebook, Facebook-login.store. Again, stop right there, let's have a talk. But what about Twitter-login.store? Nobody cares about the little birdie right there, like you can freely register that. So I want to end with, wrap this up with a couple of case studies. I usually had one when talking about this problem, but thanks to Dell, I got another one last week. So it all starts with that amazing domain name, right? Let me make that a little clearer, right? I don't know if you followed the news last week. Dell backup and recovery cloud storage.com. Well, they could easily do backup and recovery cloud storage.dell.com, right? But no, they didn't. They registered that domain name. You know what happened? 1 month in 2017, they lost control of that. People say, no, that's impossible, how can that be done? Like, no, actually, they lost control of that domain name. Rumor has it, or the news has it, that malware was downloaded from that domain name to actual users of Dell computers. And you say, okay, that's one case, that's fine. How often could that even happen? Like, yeah, that's 1 in a million or so. Well, not really. You can go ahead and look at like IEEE S&P a couple of years ago, domain Z, 28 registrations later, which talks exactly about the problem of domain names changing ownership. And that's exactly what happened with Dell. And you see Dell and you're like, sure, that's fine. But let me take you a couple of months back here. You know Equifax, you know that they leaked data, you know that something weird happened back then. So Equifax was like, okay, we need to figure out a way to inform our users that we messed up, right? They assembled their marketing team, put them in a room, and they're like, okay, figure this out. Someone's like, okay, we're Equifax, and this is a security event. Let's do Equifax security. Awesome. There's some guy in the room, they're like, okay, what year is this? 2017. I'll add that there. I'll put .com in here, and now August 22nd, we have a brand new domain name appearing, EquifaxSecurity2017.com. It wasn't a couple of weeks later when someone was like, huh, what if I take security and put it there? Take Equifax and put it here. I'll keep 2017, and I'll keep .com. September 8th, we got a new domain name. Can you imagine who fell for that domain name? It was Equifax. Exactly. They started tweeting the fraudulent domain name to their users and telling them, sure, go here to get support to this fraudulent website. That made the news people being like, the financial people being like, what is going on with you guys? Like, which one is right, which one is fake? Like, we don't even know. Actually, John Oliver beat me to it 2 weeks ago. They registered EquifaxFraudPrevention.com, and they're still asking, how were we still able to do this? Why haven't you learned anything? So, I'm going to leave you with that. Thank you very, very much. Have a happy Halloween, and any questions?
From NC State. Thanks for the talk. This was a delightful presentation. My question is, you gave us some great insights into how these domains are being used, but I'm curious, how are they ending up in the hands of people that they're being resolved in the first place? So, for example, how did your friend end up at NikeShoppings.com?
So that particular example was a case of an ad. In that case, she actually saw an ad on a blog post. That I don't want to talk about the blog, but there was an ad when she clicked on it, she ended up on NikeShoppings.com. Other types of things that I have personally seen, and we have some case studies in the paper, is from redirection chains. You might click somewhere and get redirected through other portals or collection nodes to certain Combosquatting websites. And the last case I can think of, and I've seen, is spam email. One of the things that our spam trap was actually performing good at, I was finding those domain names in spam email or spear phishing. APT33, if you would like to look into that further, they used MicrosoftUpdated.com as their spear phishing attack vector to install the APT malware. No problem.
I would just add, I've also seen it in organic Google search results. So, I mean, if you pick something that's just very specific to what somebody's going to search for, at least for a time, you end up very high in the search results. So, if you register words that are similar to what people are going to search for, and it's far enough down the list, you can be in the first page. Great talk. So, do you happen to know, or have you talked with any trademark holders about their knowledge of this and whether they're trying to do anything to stop it? And if so, can you see in your data if they've been successful, if the brand owners that are interested are successful? Because I mean, I've seen in other cases of typo squatting, there are some brands who really care and they shut this stuff down fast, and then the bad guys eventually move on. I'm wondering if there is any awareness to this in that industry.
Sure. It is true that companies and trademark holders understand that this is a problem. We've talked to several companies that have showed interest. There are a couple of companies we work together to give them feedback from what we found in our data. Now, the problem with the Combosquatting problem is inherently the problem. The space that you can create Combosquatting domains from is so large, that it takes a while for you to talk to ICANN to take a domain name back or go through the whole procedure. So unfortunately, they sometimes get stuck with that domain existing. And there is an even better question to that. What do you do after you get back the domain name like coca-colasucks.com? What do you do with that domain name? Do you point it to your homepage, coca-cola.com? Like, you need some way to effectively sync call it, for example, or make it point to a blank page. Make sure that your name is not on the quiz records, for instance. There are all sorts of weird things that are happening out there. Do I cover your?
Yeah. Hello, I'm Paul. I'm ex-Microsoft employee here. I actually claim that those campaign websites happen because of security. The corporate rules very often make it very difficult to put anything on a corporate domain, like to the content. There are internal review processes, procedures, rules to follow, authorizations, whatnot. So if you want to make a marketing campaign, you either have to fight through your internal operational security team or just hire a company who is getting domain through. So don't you think that we, the security people, are at least some level of actually that we're always created by ourselves?
You're saying if we're what? Ourselves?
So that we, the security people, have created this problem ourselves by not making it easy enough to register new domains within the company space.
So I'm not sure if it's company people who are to blame for or policy to blame for. Definitely policy stems from security sometimes. My experience in the industry is highly limited. A couple of internships so far, so I cannot tell for a fact that this is a problem. However, when I gave this talk a while back, I had the exact same feedback. Someone said that, well, it's way easier for someone to go and register Equifax security2017.com rather than getting a subdomain under Equifax. And if that's the case, then maybe that's something that we should make clear to the people who are coming up with policy, that we need web servers to redirect to a certain website, or we need child labels to be freely available for the company employees or whoever is in charge to generate them. We should not be using our trademark in Combosquatting ourselves and like pairing ourselves to the ground that way. Thank you.
I'm looking for people who might be able to solve it. It seems like you left out the TLD ops and ICANN, who are ultimately the people who get to make policy about who gets to register what. The registrars all have a massive commercial incentive to allow whatever they can. A lot of them make the majority of their income out of parked pages. So if you're looking for people to lean on, that might be a good choice.
Sure, yes, very good point, thank you. Anything else?